All right. Welcome back to our weekly Tanya class. It's been a minute after all the holidays. We're still in the month of Tishrei, but getting closer to the end of the month, and but we're happy to be back. We're still in the middle of chapter 9. I had to refresh for myself just to remember what we were talking about. Um, but we are in towards the end of chapter 9. We didn't finish yet. I'm going to put a screenshot over here. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, let me try this one more time. Print screen. That's what I wanted. All right. Um, this is more or less the screenshot that I just posted is more or less where we're holding. We were discussing about the different types of love for Hashem. There's the fiery love and the watery love, which is not to be confused with the watered down love. The fiery love is a feeling of distance, of a yearning. I need to get to there. I'm far from the destination, and I have this burning desire to reach my destination. And then there's um, the watery love, or the water type of love, is, as we know, we learned in chapter 1 of Tanya that water is the source of all delight and pleasure. And so ultimate pleasure, ultimate enjoyment in God is considered a watery love, a love that, just like water sprouts forth everything that grows. It's the spiritual concept of water that really gets this love really moving and happening. Um, so he calls this Lihisanig al Hashem me'ein olam haba, to delight in Hashem, similar to the way it'll be in the world to come. So what that means is that in in olam haba, in the world of souls, once the soul departs the body, all they do there is just like delight in godliness. Like, wow, God is just so amazing. It's like, in this world, our delights are, I don't know, sitting at a beach or something like that. But in 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 Olam Haba, delight means God. That's just delightful. And this is what we call nehenim miziva shchina. They just enjoy from the radiance, from the shine of the shchina of divinity, which is often framed as a reward for the neshama's time and effort here in this world. If it does a good job, then it gets a greater reward and a greater level of satisfaction and enjoyment um, uh, in the next world. So again, to bring this back to the beginning of chapter 9, we were talking about how there's a battle. There's a battle of a city, that there's two kings that want to conquer that city. There's the godly soul that wants to conquer it. There's the animal soul that wants to conquer it, and they're at odds with each other. So over here, he's describing, what does the godly soul want? What's its ultimate desire? What's its end goal? Right? What's the 20-point conquer plan, to borrow a modern term? Right? What does the godly soul want? It wants to that it should be able to, within the body, have this level of delight, which is, granted, highly unusual and unlikely for most people, but at least that's where the godly soul is coming from. That's what it wants to do. It knows what's out there. It knows the delight that it could have in godliness, but it wants to do that here in this body. Um, And it doesn't just want to do it alone. Remember, it wants to conquer the animal soul, that the animal soul should also pursue this kind of love. Um, so the Alter Rebbe now explains, why is it that this type of love, specifically the water love, has the ability to transform the animal soul. So we're up to the words v'ha'ineg in this, basically in the middle of that screenshot. V'ha'ineg, this delight is felt in the brain containing chachma. So v'ha'ineg, And this delight, hu b'mayach chachma v'seichel hamisanig b'askalas Hashem v'yidiyase. It's in the brain of intellect and understanding, which delights in the conceptual understanding of Hashem, in the knowledge of God, kafi hasagat sichle v'chachmasei, based on the capacity of its own ability to think and meditate and think deeply. So when we talk about the souls benefiting from the radiance of divinity in the world to come, it's a intellectual type of joy. Um, so when we talk about the soul in this world wanting to have that type of joy, that type of enjoyment, it's a enjoyment from the intellect of godliness. And so where in the body would that joy and enjoyment take place? It would take place in the brain. So what, just to illustrate, to elaborate a little further, the word ahava betanugim, love in delightfulness, is something that results from being attached to the one you love, as opposed to fiery love, which is a distance feeling of love. Ava betanugim, love of delight, is a closeness feeling of love. And what does it mean feeling close to God and thereby loving God? It means that the light of God is shining in the soul of the person. Now, where does that light shine primarily? It shines primarily in the intellect of the person with which he comprehends godliness based on his own, again, we're talking about in the human body, so it has to be based on the brain's capacity. But whatever capacity the brain is at in its level of contemplation, that's how deep the love and the radiance of godliness will be in the brain. So when a person grasps this divine light in his mind and thereby feels close and attached to godliness, he thereby feels delight and love and pleasure in godliness. So it turns out that there's actually a very distinct difference between loving God as a fiery flame versus love and delight. No audio or video. Strange. It's still recording. Sorry, just those who are watching on YouTube. Just slight pause. So basically, there's a foundational difference between the fiery love and the water love, as it's called. The fiery love is primarily a feeling in the heart, and the water love is primarily a conception in the mind. And so he says, "V'hu bechinas hamayim," and this is the concept of water. So, based on what we said, that the delight takes place in the mind, this joyful, loving delight of godliness is a concept of water within the godly soul, because as we know, everything has four elements in this world. There's inanimate objects. Eish, ruach, mayim, and afar. Every physical object has fire, water, wind, and dust. So the concept, the spiritual parallel of water of the godly soul is in the mind, because wisdom is called the water of the godly soul. And so if you're appreciating godliness on a wisdom level, on an intellectual level, that is reflected in the concept of water. So you have these two loves, the love of God like fire and the love of delight, which come from these two different elements. The thirst for godliness comes from the fire, and the delight in godliness comes from water. Now, Vizera Erzarua, the Alter Rebbe continues, Vizera Erzarua Shebekdushas Nefesh Olikis, it's zera means seed. It's a light that is sown in the holiness of the godly soul. So this what that means is that this power that the neshama has to delight from an intellectual concept of godliness, it's rooted in the concept of Ohr Zarua, a light that is sown, as we say in Tehillim, Ohr Zarua la Tzadik in chapter 97 of Tehillim. We also recite it on Friday night as one of the few chapters before Lechadodi. It says Ohr Zarua. So it's the concept of a godly light that is sown. It's planted into the godly soul, um, and what it means when the pasuk says "Er zaru ala tzaddik" is that every Jew is considered a tzaddik in the level of va'amech kulam tzaddikim. That on some level, every Jew is in the category of a tzaddik, not the kind of tzaddik that Tanya explains, but a different type of concept. But anyways, the point is that there's a light that is sown into, that's planted into the soul of every Jew, and from that comes the power and the ability to enjoy God on an intellectual level. And what does that do ultimately if all systems work well? Which transforms to good the water in the godly soul, which is not good water, from which all the delights of this world originally came from. Right? We said in chapter 1 of Tanya that water is the source of all delights and problematic delights. So how are you going to take something? How are you going to take candy and chocolate and or worse, prostitutes and who knows whatever other worldly animalistic pleasures humans can pursue? How are you going to transform those type of delights into something holy? The only way to tap into that, the only way to transform that is finding the parallel to that in holiness. And that what's the parallel? The parallel is the water type of love, the love of delight, because that's able to take the klipa water and transform it into holy water. So, in short, in order for the godly soul to transform the power of desire in the animal soul into good, meaning that even the animal soul should want to be attached to godliness, it's not sufficient to just arouse the thirst and the desire to reconnect to godliness, but it has to reach a level of pure delight in godliness. Because once you're talking about pleasure, pleasure, that's something the animal soul is all in for. Now, you just have to train it and teach it that this is what true pleasure is. But the word pleasure is certainly going to get the animal soul at least curious and say, that's something I could buy into, right? See, but the only difference is it's a slightly different type of pleasure. It's not pleasure of candy and chocolates. It's pleasure of atzilus and atik yomin and everything else about godliness. So, the more a person will appreciate and enjoy godliness on an intellectual level, the less they'll be running after the taivas gashmiim, the physical pleasures and delights. And actually, in the coming chapter, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that this type of delight in godliness that really transforms the animal soul to be completely good and to be on its own drawn towards godliness, that's really the level of a tzaddik gamur, of a complete tzaddik, which is really the highest type of tzaddik imaginable. However, even though, like I said, this is not very attainable, it's not don't try this at home without supervision. I mean, you could try, but it's most likely not going to work. But why is that relevant to us? Well, why do we care if I'm more likely to win the lottery than to become a tzaddik amor? Because the godly soul is yearning that every single day, and so that's You have to understand the battle that's going on inside of you. You have to understand the animal soul, what it wants, and you have to understand what the godly soul wants. This is the goal. This is the goal of the godly soul. And when you understand that and can appreciate that, you're like, oh, okay, fine. I see where you're coming from. I could try to accommodate you. I could try to, work with you. Maybe somehow to strive towards that, even if I never get there, but at least, to do something. Um, so the Alter Rebbe continues, it says in the book of Tree of Life, in Gate 50, Chapter 3, quoting the Zayar, This means, in practice, that the evil is transformed to goodness 100%, meaning the animal soul becomes the Yetzer Tov. So this explains what we say in the Shema when we say "B'chal levavcha," with your two hearts, with your two desires, right? With your animalistic desire and your godly desire. What we're saying is that the animal soul ultimately, again, this might not be achievable, but you have to at least buy the lottery ticket if you want to actually win. You have to at least know where you're striving towards, which is that the animal soul should transform into an equally excited force for godliness. Um, um, Actually, the Eitz Chaim writes that the Yetzer Tov, after it comes to a person, it sweetens the Yetzer Hara, um, and when it takes out the evil from the Yetzer Hara is actually able to transform into a good angel, and that's what it means. B'chol levavcha, with your two hearts, that's the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer Hara is able to transform into complete good like the Yetzer Tov. That's roughly the translation from the Zohar that we're quoting over there. So it turns out what he's trying to say is that the power of desire in the godly soul, the evil, transforms into complete good, and the Yetzer Hara becomes a Yetzer Tov. How do you do that? So the Alter Rebbe says, "Bahasir habegadim hatay mimanu," by removing the soiled garments from it. Shehem tanugei olam hazeh shu melubash bahem, which are what's the metaphor of these soiled garments? That's the delights of this world in which it has been sunken into and enmeshed into. So how do you take away the evil from the Yetzer Hara? How do you take away the evil from the animal soul? You got to clean up all the schmutz. So we were explaining that the animal soul really isn't evil per se. It's just the power of desire, which at its core has the ability to desire good as much as it leans towards evil. So if you use the power of desire to indulge in candy and chocolate or worse, then that power of desire becomes schmutzig, it becomes dirty, it becomes soiled, and it's totally enmeshed into candy, chocolate, and Vegas, because that's like soiled garments. That obviously doesn't only leave the garments soiled, but it makes the person stink. But when a person removes completely any bit of involvement in worldly pleasures and takes this very um, pure power of desire out of that whole world, then you're able to take that power and transform it to good, that it should actually be able to desire goodness and godliness. So we just explained how the godly soul wants to control the person, wants to control how the person loves and expresses emotions, that it should all be towards godly things. But specifically, we were focusing on yira and ava, how it expresses love and how it expresses fear, and how that can be directed towards godliness. But now the Alter Rebbe says that obviously this all applies to the other faculties as well, the other midas, the other emotions. V'chein shar kol hamidas shebalev, and the same is true for all the other emotions, chesed, gvura, tiferes, etc. Shehin Anfei Hayira Ava, which they're really just branches of Yira and Ava. Yira and Ava, fear and love, are really just the two general emotions, but there are subdivisions, sub emotions from those. And the godly soul wants that those two should be Yiyu La Hashem Levad, they should be exclusively feeling and desiring towards Hashem. And then the three garments that we're familiar with at this point, which are V'chol Koyach Hadibur Shabapeh, every power of speech in the mouth, V'hamachshava Shemamayach, and thoughtfulness in the mind, Yiyu Memulayim Min Levushe Hamachshava V'Adibur Shel Nefesh Kis Levada. They should just be filled with the garments of thought and speech of the godly soul alone, Shein Machshavas Hashem Terasai, which is thinking about God and God's Torah, because the Torah is not just an idea of God, it really is a part of God. That's a subject for another time. And that means that means his entire speech, the entire day, anything he talks about, his mouth should never be interrupted from studying Torah. So when the godly soul says, I want this entire edifice of the body to be filled with godliness and godly expression, and have no foreigners enter whatsoever, it should be only godliness, that means everything. That means not just the actions, but every thought, every speech should be totally immersed in godliness, which means practically studying Torah all day. The koyach hamasi shebiyadav, and certainly the power of action in his hand, ushara machivarav, and his other 248 limbs, yiyu b'maisa mitzvahs levad, should be involved in the actions of mitzvahs. Which action is the third of the three garments of the godly soul. So that, again, the godly soul wants that all actions as well should be totally captured by the godly soul and controlled by it. And that's how a person can connect himself to godliness. So now, until here, we described the game plan, the desire of the godly soul, what its stated goal is in this battle. But now he's going to very briefly describe what the animal soul wants. However, by contrast, the animal soul that comes from klipa, it wants the exact opposite. So whatever we said about the godly soul, just insert animal soul and then just copy paste, and there you go. It wants exactly that, the opposite. Just like the godly soul wants to have exclusive control over the entire body, not leaving any room for the animal soul, so too the animal soul wants to have exclusive dominion over the body, and there should be no foreigners, no godly soul, no nothing. So it's not just that the animal soul practically wants a person to do sinful things, but it opposes the very existence of the godly soul. And it's not willing to compromise because the animal soul knows that every ounce of existence of the godly soul is 1 ounce less of its own existence. So then why did God create this? Why did God make our lives so difficult? Right? It's like, couldn't you have made it simple? Couldn't we have set up a system where there could be some compromise? No. The Alter Rebbe says, it's all l'tayvas ha'adam she's gaber aleha v'inatzchena. It's all for the person's good and well-being, that you should be able to overpower that animal soul and win it, that you should have challenges and you should find inner resources and strength to overpower it, and the only way that's possible to find that inner resource and extra strength is when the animal soul is at equal force opposing the godly soul. So turns out that when the animal soul is desiring and pushing and trying to convince you to do everything wrong and fill up every thought and speech and deed with shtusim and terrible things and animalistic things, it's doing exactly the job that God wanted it to do, which is to give us something to overcome. And that is really for our good. As is the analogy of the prostitute in the Holy Zohar. What's the story of the prostitute in the Zohar? So the Zohar asks, What's this whole Yetzer Hara business doing here? The Yetzer Hara is a malach, it's a messenger of Hashem. How can how is it possible that the servant, a messenger of a king, should cause things, should cause essentially should cause a revolution against the king? It's like you're the minister of revolution. You're the minister of rebellion. Like, how does that work? What kind of government system is this that you create a department of opposition? So the Zohar answers that with an analogy that it's like a king who wanted to test his only son, and in order to test his son's endurance and integrity, he hired a prostitute to try to persuade his son to sin. And obviously, the king never wanted the son to sin, but he hired the prostitute in order to bring out the integrity and endurance and quality of the son that he has. So even while the prostitute is working and trying to get the son to sin, she doesn't want the son to listen to her. And and if she succeeds in seducing the son, she feels bad. She wants to fail. She wants to not succeed because that's ultimately what will make the father, the king, happy. And the same is true with the animal soul. It is here just to do the shlichus of Hashem. It's here to persuade a person, to seduce a person into worldly pleasures. But the whole purpose of that mission is that a person should overcome it and win it. And that's ultimately for our good, because that's how we bring out our true qualities and our true integrity and strength, by overcoming that. So that should hopefully give us a great boost and encouragement in our service of God, that even though we have all these obstacles, we have to realize these obstacles are just a silly prostitute that was hired by the king just to fool us. And even all these obstacles don't really want us to be attracted to them, but instead our job is to ignore them and overpower them and bring out our desire directed towards godliness alone. L'chaim. That concludes chapter 9, and Mitzvah Hashem next week we'll start chapter 10.